Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Welcome everybody to this town hall meeting. It's regarding the short-term rental proposal that'll the board will be voting on Wednesday night. The way these work, if you haven't been to a town hall meeting before, Cheryl Jacobs will be running the town hall meeting. The communications committee runs these, and we have a couple directors here to answer questions. Frank Daly, who has been working on this for a couple years now, will make a presentation before we get going, and then the floor will be yours. So everyone can rise and pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Cheryl?
Thank you all for coming out this evening. This is a topic where I know there's a lot of interest, so thank you for showing your interest by showing up. And we're going to start with a presentation by Frank Daly, who, as Larry mentioned, has been working on this topic on your behalf for several years. Frank.
Thank you. Just to give you a little overview, this effort actually started a little bit more than 2 years ago. And the reason it started is we were getting a very small but a persistent number of problem short-term rentals in Ocean Pines. And we were proceeding down the road of doing something, and the county commissioners approached the board and said, by the way, we're going to have some legislation. We'd like you to talk with you about it and see what happens. And we decided to kind of pull back and not do anything till the county legislation came on stream. When the county legislation came on stream, if those of you that went to the meeting, and some I understand have, county commissioners basically passed the current legislation. This is the second year involved. And at the end, they basically said, look, this is what we're going to do. And this is pretty much all we're going to do, because this is, at the end of the day, an Ocean Pines problem. No other incorporated area of the county has it. And because we're an unincorporated area and the largest unincorporated area of the county, we do. So we're pretty much there depending, and it's come out a number of different conversations, a number of different ways that we'll cooperate with you. We'd like to work with you. We'll do what we can. But at the end of the day, you have to do what you can do within your governing documents to control the problems within Ocean Pines. So after looking at the situation with the rental properties and the problems and the persistence of them, what we decided to do was try to tailor something specifically for Ocean Pines. What we want is something that does not restrict property rights any more than they are restricted by the existing county law. And as a homeowners association, we can't draft something that's less restrictive than the county law. So after going and talking with a number of stakeholders, and those stakeholders, for those of you who followed this, we've talked with the fire marshals, the fire chiefs, the police chiefs, county zoning, county commissioners. What we have decided to do is to incorporate the Worcester County Code for short-term rentals, for litter, and for noise into our declarations of restrictions as the approach, and to put a more enhanced enforcement mechanism in place than what currently exists with the county, within the county. So that's where we're at. Just to give you an overview on how the process works, to change the declaration of restrictions, you vote section by section. 50% of the people have to vote. You need, after 50% votes, the majority, which way that goes, determines whether the DRs are changed. That's basically where we're at, what we're prepared to do. And at the end of the day, you know, I've listened to both sides, have met, along with my colleagues on the board, several times with the Coastal Realtor Association. And this is a kind of situation where, and it's a narrow situation, one of these narrow situations also, where I think it is appropriate that the board gives the decision to the homeowners. Because as an individual homeowner, if you have property and you're a short-term rental and you want to rent it, you should be able to do so. There's no argument with that. If you live next to a problem property and you don't want it, that's your decision, and you should be able to say, we don't want to live next to it. And this is one case where all 8,452 lot owners should really have their voices heard. I'm open for questions.
Okay, we're going to ask anyone that would like to ask a question of Frank to come to the mic. And before you start asking your question, please state your name and your address. First person?
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Hayes. I live at 39 Whitehorse, right around the corner. I'm a property manager, I'm a homeowner, and I'm on both sides of this story. But one of the things that Frank said is that he's talked with everyone involved in this side. And I would say that he probably hasn't talked with as many short-term rental property managers than maybe just me. I know he and I talked for 45 minutes, and Steve Tuttle and I talked for 20 minutes. That's inside the last 3 years. I'm pretty vocal on social media, and I've been out and about talking to 1 million people here. And I say that because I've been talking to people since 1990. 1991 is when I became a property manager in Ocean Pines. I have a 9-page PowerPoint presentation that I wanted to put up tonight because I didn't get the opportunity back in March when we were doing the Zoom to have the questions after the board meeting because we tabled it. The short-term rental manager side has not been presented.
Do you
So
have a particular question or questions that you'd like to pose at this time?
I do have several
Okay.
questions.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to make 2 points tonight. And one was that the short-term rentals haven't been heard yet. The people that have the short-term rentals, people like me. I think the nuisances that short-term rentals get blamed for is a community problem. And I believe that problem, even if we erased the short-term rentals, made them go away, we would still have the nuisance. And Ocean Pines hasn't figured out the nuisance yet or how to solve it.
And one of your questions would be?
Frank, you think that if you change the paragraph, you'll change the paragraph to our DRs. That will change the character and the atmosphere of Ocean Pines.
No, I don't think that that would change the character of Ocean Pines because right now, let's put a couple of things in perspective, and where you disagree, let me know, okay? Because Bill and I have certainly talked before. There are, according to the most recent information I have, and that could be dated because it was a little bit pre-seasoned, 144 short-term rental licenses in Ocean Pines. The general consensus is there are far more rental properties than 144 rented short-term. To the best of my knowledge, we have never had a problem with a Worcester County licensed short-term rental. So we're not after short-term rentals. The problems that we have been with unlicensed rentals. And when we've tried to enforce that or talk with them about it, and in a particular case that's the poster child for it, which was 91 Abbyshire, they came up and they told the county officials and the board members here point blank to our face, we're not going to change our business model until somebody really can come and throw somebody out of his house. So that's what we're faced with. So from that standpoint, and here's where I agree with you, Bill. If you had property managers here, this problem would go away. The problem is not with properties that have property managers. The problem is not with properties like one of the county owners or county license holders who called me, and he lives on High Sheriff Trail, and the property that he rents is right behind him. So he looks over it. The problem is with absentee people who don't use property managers, who have no contacts and no ability to address problems when they get problem tenants in. And look, there are people that have emailed me that have said, I've rented my property here for 20 years and I've not had a problem. So what happens when I get a problem? Well, you're probably not going to have a problem, but it's the people that constantly have the problems that aren't around. And I'd say this, as recently as this week, and this is the thing that I think really bothers a lot of people. I'll just leave it at that, okay? People say the county should do their job. And I know you and I have had this conversation. You feel the county should do their job. So this year, this week, the board got an email from a short-term rental license owner who said, I have problems with another short-term rental. I've talked with the county. The county said they can't help. They're trying to send registered letters to the person. They don't know where they're at. They suggested we contact you and have you try to solve the problem and figure out how to contact the owner. That's why we have to take this on. And we have to take it on so we can address that. And I'll be the first to admit to everybody in this room, look you in the eyes, not you, you're not a problem. The problem is that 3 or 4 persistent problems that we have every year where the owners are absentee and they have no property managers, and really they just don't simply seem to care very much about property responsibilities. And that is solely, absolutely, and 100% accurately the target of what we're trying to do.
I get that part, but I mean, my point is that once you identify someone that is not a short-term rental and that is still a nuisance, that's not in the DRs.
So let me address that. And why we went this way. That's why we went this way instead of with short-term rentals. A couple of years ago, some of us had the unique experience of having a homeowner stand before the board with tears in her eyes, talking about a problem property next door on Bramblewood. And she outlined exactly what she was going through. And here was the kind of, I think, feeling that at least I imparted to my colleagues, not on my watch. This homeowners association exists for one basic reason. That is to protect the character of the community and homeowner value. And if we're not doing that job, then we should all leave because we're just failing miserably. So we completely changed the way that we handle violations of our declaration of restrictions. And what used to drag on for 6, 8, 9 months, today is handled this way. When you have a violation outside of the short-term rentals, but by the way, only because short-term rentals, the people are so transient, okay? You have 30 days to fix that violation. If you don't fix that violation, the general manager is empowered to take you to court. That's how we enforce our DRs. And that's exactly what's happening. And that's why, for those of you that pay attention, have come into board meetings, that we're not going meeting after meeting with property after property. Now, other thing, both systems, complaint driven. You can have a bad house, and if we don't get a complaint, it's not going to be addressed. That continues to be a problem. And that's one that's a little tougher because you'd have to ask everybody in the community, do you want to go to a proactive, active enforcement system or complaint driven? Right now, Ocean Pines over the years has been a complaint driven system, and so has the county. But certainly that could change if the community wants it to change.
You're not addressing the perspective that I'm failing to communicate.
Can
It's
you put
Friday
that,
night
can you put that
across the
into a question?
It's
do you think-
Friday night, it's the noise is across the canal. It's not a short-term rental. We don't have 30 days. We don't have an inspector. We don't have any of that. So and it's not a short-term rental. What's our recourse? How do we complain about that person and solve that problem on Friday night? 30 days and these other thoughts of writing it down and talking about it later and getting to them later. That's not what that homeowner wants to hear.
On the long-term situation or permanent resident, I would agree with you. But unless we wanted to expand what we're talking about in short-term rentals to everybody.
You can't pick on short-term rentals and not pick on everybody else.
Well,
Bill, you make a good point, but the same process would start with a call to the police department. And if you're having rowdy people, a call to the police department, they will go to that house. Now, they can't go in the house, they can't throw people out, but they can deal with rowdy houses. And that goes on all summer long. So it's not like the
Police are going to deal with the trash?
well, the trash, no, they're not going to deal with that.
That's one of the things that's on this motion.
Yes. Yep.
Trash, noise, nuisance.
If it's, again, if it's we'll go back to the example with Bramblewood, that was part of the problem. And it was trash, the house was a mess, maintenance was a mess,
Concur.
and
Agreed.
it finally took changing what we could do as an association to get some impact over there. You know, your question was, someone across the canal or across the street's having a party, they're raising a lot of noise. The solution at this point is to call the police department, and they will intervene.
The short-term rental right now gets in trouble, if this goes through, for hosting a birthday party. It's explicit, it's spelled out in the words by the county that says you will not host an anniversary, a birthday, a gathering. It says that right in these words that you passed out and sent out to everybody.
Yeah.
That's in the county document. By you adopting a DR that adopts the county document, you are telling me I can't have a short-term rental that hosts a birthday party, regardless of numbers. I'm saying that we have to look at this stuff. We have to get a group that says both short-term rentals are talking at the table and the other side's talking at the table.
Yeah.
And we're still not there.
Just 1.0. Right now, what you said is correct, but when you rent a short-term rental and you hold a birthday party or an anniversary party or a wedding, you are in violation of the county law,
Correct.
the way the county law is written today. And, the law is the law. So,
And you could suspend me for 3 years because then you're in charge. If the board is in charge of short-term rentals and the people that manage the rentals, and we violate it, we had a party, you could, at the very letter of the law, take it all the way and suspend that short-term rental for 3 years. That's what the county documents say.
but that's not what our document says.
I haven't seen your document.
Starting to hand up.
No, I've got it.
Okay.
It says we're adopting county regulations.
And the part for fines, the motion itself, let's see here.
See, our population, the short-term rental population, feels targeted. 7% potentially of the entire Ocean Pines is short-term rentals. I'm saying that's 600 homes. We have to walk the letter of the law where the other people may not have to. That same house that can only have 5 people sleep in it by the county rules can turn into a long-term rental and sleep 15 people. Because that's what it can do. Once,
Just one point to clear. The current motion in front of the board that'll be presented at the board meeting on Wednesday says rentals can be suspended up to 60 days max, not 3 years.
But it says we're adopting the county documents, and you post the letters of the words of the county documents.
That's right. That's for the regulations, but for the enforcement, which you go over to the enforcement side, which would include the suspension and the fines, we would not revoke any rental privileges for any period longer than 60 days.
So a short-term rental that violates and it gets suspended for 60 days, pays the county the $50, becomes a long-term rental, and immediately starts continuing their business as a rental company.
They could certainly do that.
They don't know that.
They could certainly do that because we cannot circumvent or supersede the county law. But that option would be available to them. You're correct.
And that in the motion that we saw tonight, which was handed out tonight, I think that's the first time we've seen that distributed.
Actually, I think it's in the board packet, which is public information.
At the upcoming
Yeah.
board for Thursday.
And I'll double check to make sure it's the correct one, because quite frankly, to your point about suspending, and I know one of the issues that you've had is under what circumstance and how and everything like that, because this whole issue of potentially targeting. So let me just address that for a couple of seconds. First, on the advice of everybody, okay, legal, county officials, fire marshals, they said, use this as, if you have a violation, use it as an educational opportunity. Tell people what the rules are and tell them you have a warning. Okay? Second thing, ramp up any enforcement, any fines from this is your first violation, okay, so it's not really major. The second violation, more. Third violation, much more, with the exception of the licensing. And with the licensing, I think the attitude for people is, look, if something's been in the law for 2 years and you haven't followed it, you're not going to follow it. And in that case, it would be not an immediate, but you have X number of days to get the license, or else the fines start, and the fines would be much more severe. But your points about somebody being able to shelter and leave the short-term rental and get a long-term rental license is absolutely true. And it is certainly true that we have some problems with long-term residents as well as rentals.
Yeah, my long-term rentals look worse than my short-term. Short-term, they're looking for a review. The long-term, over time, you have to stay on them hard.
Yeah.
And I'd hate to see our community go more on the long-term side than the short-term side, because the short-term, they're presented. They're set up for making money and looking good.
Yeah.
And those properties are much better than long-term renters.
I would agree with you if they have property managers. The other thing too, with the, just with the long-term, we feel pretty confident in our capability of handling DR violations with our process now that we've revised it. It does, by the way, for everybody that's out there, and one of the reasons that we want to go this way with the fines, our other option is to take people to court, okay? And I'll give you the timeline on Abyshire. All last summer, people were harassed. All last summer, county officials were coming by and writing citations, okay? The court finally took up the case in February and fined the person $500. They were renting the property basically from Memorial Day to Labor Day at $400 a night, which is $40,000. They get a $500 fine in the middle of the winter. That's the problem.
It's a huge problem.
Thank you. Could we let?
I know.
Thank you.
I know.
I want to
And
give
I
other
appreciate-
people.
Cheryl, I would just
I
like to make one
appreciate the
statement.
flexibility that you just gave me. What I wanted initially back in March was an opportunity to present. I wanted the opportunity to present tonight. And I think the short-term rental side people still didn't get the chance to present.
So, Bill, I just want to say that I agree with you, that I would like to see these regulations apply to long-term rentals and permanent residents. I see this as a step in that direction. I acknowledge the problem that you are stating. And I
would
think it
love a
needs
list
to
of
be
rules.
solved.
I love a list of rules. I'd like to post them on the back of my door, my short-term rental, have them clearly see what we're doing with those. And I also love to see the enforcement of those people that are cheating, people that are renting on long-term, short-term, whatever, and aren't going through the proper procedures.
Thank you. I'd like to give some other people an
Yes, ma'am.
opportunity to ask
Thank
a
you.
question.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to ask a question, please come up, state your name, and then your address, and then you can ask your question.
Gary Clift, 1302 McHenry Court, Ocean Pines.
Your question?
One of the questions here is, I'll ask Mr. Perone, do you like to get up every morning and see 3 or 4 cars parked on your grass? It's not my grass technically, okay? The county and everybody tells me I don't own it all, even though for 20 years we cut it and fertilize it and maintain it, and no one's ever cleaned our ditches but ourselves. And it looks beautiful, but the cars park on the lawn, and when they get in and out, they throw trash everywhere. And you can cut your grass when they decide to move the cars, which may be 4 or 5 days. I mean, no one likes that. No one likes that in front of their house. The next question, I'll ask the lady in the middle. I'm not really sure of her name.
I'm Camilla Rogers.
Miss Rogers?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you like to live next to a community of hotels, motels, boarding houses, where only thing they think about is personal profit and not the peace and tranquility on why we lived here?
Do I?
Would
I
you like to
current-
live
I-
next?
Would I like to live there? No, sir, I would not.
Yeah. And
I'm sorry. No, I would not. And I lived in Baltimore, so I was pretty close to those kinds of things there. And I can't say it was the most enjoyable time in my life. But your question is, I'm sure it's not just about me or any of us and where we've lived, but I think you have a larger question than that. So could you tell us what that is?
well, I mean, even on the personal forums and all in the area, I have been told by asking for regulations on the short-term rentals that I'm messing with their pensions. This is their pension plan. This is how they make their money. I didn't know when I moved into Ocean Pines that I would have to be a fiduciary on someone else's pension because their pension plans are in the homes around me. I mean, I don't know. That could be for anybody on the board. Do you think we should maintain the different people's pensions, even if it means that you don't have peace and tranquility at your house?
Gary, first off, it's good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a little while, so it's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. I've seen you a couple times, but you've been busy.
Where I live on Clipper Court, and we do have a couple rentals there. Fortunately, the people that rent there make sure that we don't have a lot of the problems that we've seen at a place like Abishire or I forget the address of the other place. Bramblewood, but then there was also another problem property last summer too. I can't remember what street it was on. But anyway, the parking issue is a problem. With the way we are, Ocean Pines is just about built out at this point. And unfortunately, most of the people don't have driveways large enough to fit all the cars in that are going to be there. We can't stop people from parking on the side of the road. And we've looked into this issue over and over and over again. And the most recent issue was with Colonial Village. We received a letter from, I can't remember the name of the homeowner, but it doesn't matter.
I'm very familiar with it because I've been on the board for 6 years.
Okay, so then you know what I'm talking about. And we have pictures of people parking on the side, dropping their boats off at the boat ramp, pulling their trailers up, leaving them there all day. And, we've addressed it with the police department, with the county. And quite honestly, there's nothing we can do about that. And so I guess my answer to your question is, it's not a great thing. Currently this weekend I've got a rental property 2 doors away from me that has 5 cars and one of them's parked on the street. And then on the other side, I have a house that is not a rental, 2 doors on the other side. And it's not a permanent residence, but the family has their son living there, and there's 4 cars there too. So my own feeling is that I think that is one of the things that we do have to deal with here in Ocean Pines. We can't force people to have larger driveways because for the most part of it, we even if we wanted to, we couldn't, because you only can cover so much property. We don't want paved driveways all over the place either, causing the problems that they cause. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's.
No, I'm familiar with pretty much what all you said. And
Did you have another question?
yes, I'll address this on the Miss Horn. There's many times where 1, 2, 3 in the morning on the one short-term rental, that's when they decided to move in. So everybody and the neighbors all around us are woke up. And then it's this tremendous noise. Sometimes there's arguments. They're out there. I look at it as just bringing Ocean City's problems west. I mean, would you like to be right across from one of these at 2 in the morning? Even though we call the police, by the police come, they tell them to calm down. But the point is, they're done woken everybody up already.
Yeah, the county has noise ordinances that will be incorporated into what we, if this motion passes, that we will be able to enforce using, if our DRs are amended, section by section, to be able to enforce those noise ordinances. And that was one of the reasons I think that Frank has put all this work into studying this and coming up with a plan that would be workable to address those issues. What we have been told is when there are noise problems, whether it's a short-term rental or a permanent resident or a long-term rental, is to call 911 and issue the complaint so that a record will be created of the problem at that residence, and potentially there will be a longer-term solution to address that. But I agree with you, the noise issues, particularly when the noise carries across the water, which seems to amplify the decibel level of the noise, is a huge problem, whether it's a rental or not.
Thank you.
Did you have one more question?
Yeah,
Just
I want
one
to move
more?
on. I'll move.
Can I just answer another part
Okay.
of something that I didn't see earlier and I should have? The bylaws that we have in Ocean Pines, I think, are really extremely well written. And one of the words that caught my attention in what we have written down is the word nuisance. That's noise. That's excessive. That's just excessive behavior that we don't want to tolerate in our neighborhoods. And for that reason, we have been able to work on this committee. And I really take exception to the fact that we're trying to target short-term rentals. That is simply not the case here at all. What we're trying to do is to be responsive to a community who says, hey, we've got a problem. Some of it's short-term rentals, some of it's long-term rentals. So let's flatten the playing field and set standards for appropriate behavior, which we can all live by, and that's going to make a better community. And quite frankly, I know there's a lot of stuff going on tonight, transfusions up at the yacht club and everything else. I'm really glad to see you all here, and I'm really glad for these comments. And, Frank has worked diligently on this, just really, really diligently, and kept his nose to the grindstone on this. So it's a pleasure to have you here, and I really thank you for your comments.
Can we move on and take I see
have
somebody.
one last question for Frank, because I think Frank's put a lot into it, and a lot of people, and I know our community, appreciate it. Many communities where they regulate the short-term rentals in the surrounding states actually go by a percentage of the gross income. I know we've had a little small fee. Have we ever looked at maybe looking at the gross income of a rental? Yeah, yes or no is good. I know. I think if we come up with a small fee, it's really minor, but other places charge a percentage of the gross, which is substantially higher.
Yeah, actually, we have looked but not in the context of some communities do, in terms of this being a revenue stream for the association. We're looking at this as purely a nuisance that you've brought to us. And I mean, I'll tell all of you again. Look, when you bring a problem to us at the board, we have three choices. We can address it, we can walk away from it, or we can kick the can down the road. We've decided to address this issue. Where money comes in, and where we've looked at it, is in terms of fines and rental rates. Because quite frankly, at Abbyshire, attorneys, county officials, and even, quite frankly, the person that was handling the rentals for Abbyshire laughed at us. They're getting a $100 ticket a day when they're in violation, and they're making $400 in income. They considered that nothing more than a cost of doing business. If this passes, we will correct that loophole. And if somebody wants to be in continuing violation and play hardball, we will welcome them to the major leagues.
Well, I want to thank the board for working on this concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. State your name and your address, please.
Probably too short here. Okay, my name is Yvette Tanios, and I live on 28 Leslie Mews. That's Thames Landing. Now, I have-
Stay by the mic because we're recording
Okay,
this.
I have a problem with my rental. I know the gentleman before, he said he's a property management, but we do not have the rental. My neighbor, several houses in my neighborhood, in my street, they don't have a property management. They go through VRBO or they go through whatever it is, but they are not on site. And when I text my neighbor about a problem, he's nowhere to be found. So here is some of my problem. Noise, I call the police. I have a pool. And every 15, 20 minutes, I have a frisbee on my pool. I have a ball in my pool. I have a baseball in my pool. That is irritating. Every few minutes, I'll have to come out and they knock at my door. They wanted to get their frisbee out. Come on. What is the association is doing for us? They're making tons of money by renting. Why do I have to do? Can I have my block? And then we have 5 bedrooms. My next door neighbor is 5 bedrooms. He rents for multiple families. And the next, across from him, there is another big family that they rent for multiple families. And then you will have like 10, 12 cars in my neighborhood. I cannot have friends. I cannot have my family over. My whole block is blocked. So I would like to get a sign that says no parking from Memorial Day weekend to Labor Day weekend. And I'm willing to pay for it. I am done with it.
So your question to the board then is, can you do that?
Can I do that?
Okay, that's your question.
This is so irritating. I mean, how much can one would take?
No, we completely understand. I will say this. If you notice, conspicuously absent in this motion is parking, as Larry was kind of referring to. If this motion passes, the next step is to sit down with our commissioners and talk with them about what we can do to mitigate the parking issues, the extreme parking issues that we see with not only short-term rentals, but with some long-term rentals and some permanent residents. Because when you start moving in, I mean, look, you know, depending on the size of driveway that you have, when it was built, and at the time, the zoning code that was in effect, you should be able to park in Ocean Pines today 4 cars in a driveway. In the more recent construction, you should be able to park 6 cars in a driveway. And in some of the larger houses in the areas where you live on Turn and Alton, you can maybe, I saw one where you could park 12 plus cars. But when you have parking as a consistent problem, I think that we should be able to go to the commissioners, which I think right now is the only thing that we can do, and ask them to create a no parking zone or no parking zones at certain times. And we're certainly willing to do that.
Okay, let me give you one point here. When you said the parking, the driveway, guess what? They have like 6 cars and they do not park in their driveway. They park in front of me because they don't want to take their car, and because another one wants to move and move your car so I can get out. So they are parking in front of us.
Did you have
As I
another?
say, and Yvonne, that's a perfect example of where we should be able, on persistent cases, I'm not talking, if it happens once a year because somebody's having like
All
an
summer
anniversary,
long.
but if it's happening all summer long, that's one case
Every
where we
summer.
should be able to address
All
it
summer
with a
long
no
and every
parking
summer.
sign.
And then I have my boat and the dock, and I have a ladder separate from my boat. The rentals comes in, right? Because the owner leaves his boat there. and he rents, and the rentals have their own boat. So they come and dock their boat right next to me and use in my ladder, and in the middle of my street, in the middle of my grass, they walk in. This is Stern's Landing. What did I say? It's the jewel of Ocean Pines. Give me a break. What does the association do for us? They're getting money in their pockets. My next door neighbor is renting $5,500 every week. What does the association get from it?
Yeah, Yvonne, we really appreciate that you came here tonight. The problem of people using your property to exit their boats is not a problem that has been brought to our attention before tonight. So I thank you for sharing that with us. As Frank indicated, we have two avenues for addressing this problem. The avenue that we're currently attempting to take is to adopt the county regulations as regulations that we ourselves can enforce, and to have each section vote on the ability for us to enforce our regulations and the county regulations. The next step is to address the parking issue, and it sounds like we also have a trespassing issue that needs to be addressed. I believe that calling 911 would be a step toward addressing for you yourself to address the trespassing issue. If people are using your property, your pier, your ladder to exit their boats, encroaching, your property line goes out into the canal, into the waterway. If they are encroaching on your property in the waterway, that is trespassing. And calling 911 to get that addressed is a step in the process. But, we will certainly take this under advisement as a board to be aware that that's an issue as well. So thank you for coming and sharing that with us.
But I just want to make sure that I'm willing to pay for the block in front of my house, because I am really tired. Every summer is the same thing, 15 cars every summer.
Have you
every week.
considered putting cones or
But
those
I
little
can't put
stakes?
cones. I called the police. One time I had the guy came in and I had a party. So I moved my car right close to him. So I left my driveway for my friends to come in. The guy comes in, knock at my door. You son of a bitch, you parked your car. All you have to do, ask me, please, could you move your car? That is the kind of rentals we get.
It's a shame.
And then I called the police. And the police sided with him. And the police said, well, it's a public street. Well, I'm parking too in a public street. Just because I'm too close to him. Hey, it's a public street. So this is very irritating, and it's just, I moved here 4 years ago. I thought we're retiring, and it's a nice, we lived in Ocean City, and I thought like, oh, this is a nice neighborhood. It's quiet, and we moved here. Only to find out I have a problem. Every summer I have a problem.
Thank you, Yvette. Next person would like to ask a question? Yes, ma'am. Your name and your address first.
Virginia Satula. I live at 21 Battersea Road.
Thank you.
I have the misfortune of living next to a short-term rental. I'd like to know if you would create for all the rentals, let's call it a poster of regulations, whatever, that is mandated to be put either on the front door and also inside. Speaking for the renters, we've had some lovely renters next door to us. They're not all terrible. Bachelor parties, that's something else. But families, really, they're really quite good. But unless people know what the rules are, then it's not their fault. For example, maximum occupancy. Every hotel room has that. And they're renting these short terms like hotel rooms. Quiet hours. There's an inferred quiet hours 11 p.m. to like 7 a.m. from what I was told here. It's inferred. And what do you mean by quiet hours? I understand decibel levels, measuring this and that, you're quiet, I can't hear, maybe I need it louder. Most people, when I go and remind them, 11:30, 12 o'clock, can you please take your party inside? Most do. However, I get lip periodically and cussed out and told me, mind my own business. I'm only here for a day or two. Leave me alone. Yeah, okay. Trash cans. They will put the trash cans at the street. That should be on this, I'm calling it a poster, the regulations that these people who are renting should know. Parking issues. I was told all 4 tires have to be on the grass if you're on the road or on the shoulder. See, I thought it was all, well, 2 tires, these roads are so narrow. If you do 2 tires on each side, there's a problem for fire trucks going down. And I hope this will be addressed in the future, that we could at least do something with this. Anyway, so that's what I would like to see. Again, in fairness to those who are renting, will you please put on, and this is uniform, you can fill in, as they do in hotel rooms, maximum occupancy. When these people register for the county, those that are registered for the county, do they register with you also? Do you get this list that you know who is renting?
Let me answer a couple things, a couple of different points. By adopting the county code, the way the county code is right now, when somebody applies for a county rental license, they need to, with that application, send in the house rules. So to answer your first question, there's absolutely no reason that when we issue a rental license, which is going to be, by the way, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that says, okay, that house, those house rules for that house can be on the back of it. Okay, and so that's posted for that
I was
house.
gonna say, can you mandate that it's being posted?
Yeah, we could do that. That's not an issue, and that wouldn't raise anything because the county right now requires that their license be posted inside in a conspicuous area. So I don't see that as an issue we could certainly do that. As far again as the parking's a different issue, and your third question was?
Well, there's also trash cans.
Trash cans, oh, okay. Actually, the county has, if you look up Worcester County E-Code 360 and you put in litter and read it, by the way, it's also a great cure for insomnia, okay?
I can't wait.
You will find that the county actually has a pretty decent code for handling trash, okay? The problem again is the people that enforce it, okay, come from the sheriff's office in Cody, Wyoming, okay? So we can enforce by incorporating the county litter, okay? That gives us a different path of enforcement than using the police, but through our DRs. But if we follow that, that'll give us a path for doing that. And again, if we go to our warning, ramp up, I think that that'll go a long way toward correcting the trash problem.
Are there going to be regulations for the owners to see that those trash cans not only are brought down on trash day, but brought back?
Yeah, now I'm going to do this from memory. Remember, this is like law, right? Okay. But here's the deal with the county thing. If, as I recall the county litter, if you leave a trash bag outside your house and an animal gets in it and they spread that trash all around and your name appears on 2 pieces of that paper identifying that house, that is a citable offense under the county code. Correct, Bill? Yes. And that's exactly what we will do.
Problem, of course, is on my street. On my street, trash pickup is Monday and Thursday. So we have renters who rent from Thursday to Friday. And we have this big party, and that trash is out there from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, till pickup on Monday. And Anyway, if you can address this, please, with the those who are kind enough to get their license.
We
Thank you.
can certainly do the rules in the litter. And by the way, just, I don't want you to think, we have had some serious discussions on requiring a property manager. And that's another kind of lightning rod kind of situation, because if you live, as one of the license holders told me, he lives behind the property that he rents. Okay, he doesn't need a property manager and doesn't need to pay the commissions, which I think run 18 to 20% right now. Okay, but you still have to get somehow, and we have to figure out a mechanism to, I guess the cure to your problem is figuring out a mechanism to get somebody within a reasonable distance and within a reasonable time that can respond to complaints on behalf of the owner.
Yes.
Okay? And that's kind of tricky to dictate that.
Thank you. Next person? Yes, sir. State your name and address, please.
Stuart Lackernick, 9 Widows Watch Court. Good evening, folks. I had a couple questions, and I have to be honest with you. I agree with Bill Hayes that short-term renters are being singled out as opposed to this may be a community-wide problem, short-term, long-term, and permanent residents. Instead of just picking on short-term rentals, I think that, Camilla, can you, you're an attorney, correct? No, I understand that. But as an attorney, if I have a specific problem with a neighbor, could I file injunctive relief at Snow Hill on Monday and be in front of a judge?
I can't really answer that question definitively, and I'm not copping out on it. The courts are still so backed up from COVID. Can you do it immediately? I don't think so, because I mean, a lot of my cases have been.
We're not talking like 6 months like Abbyshire, which, to be honest, that person sold the house, so that's not necessarily an issue. If we're talking about 3 or 4 bad actors in a community of 8,452 lot owners, homeowners, we're talking an incredibly small percentage of short-term renters that may be causing issues. I think that we have permanent residents that cause issues with neighbors all the time. We have long-term renters that cause issues and short-term. I think it's sort of unfair to just single out short-term renters. Thank you. I had a place up in the Poconos, and this is maybe off topic a little bit, but kind of specific. For every renter that rented in our community, the administration building, everybody had to sign in at the administration building, get a parking placard so that they could park, and the keys were kept there. So the administration acted as a pseudo agent, but there was a weekly fee or what have you involved with that. So that may be something that could be considered. But parking, trash, and noise are the 3 big things. I agree with you. I don't think there's much that can be done with parking. But trash and noise, 911, I think, is your best answer. And I think you can get in front of a judge in a rather short amount of time, not immediately, by filing yourself at Snow Hill,
Well, that's, I mean, certainly, Stuart, that is the law.
as opposed to having the board take an action.
Well, that is the law. If an independent person wants to do that, then, I'm sorry. If an independent person wants to take that on and go and file a petition in Snow Hill to get injunctive relief, that is certainly within the Maryland Code, and that certainly is your right to do that.
Okay.
How long it would take is anybody's guess.
And
Thank
how
you.
the judge would act on it is also anybody's guess.
Well,
And
yeah,
I
but
think
you could.
know that what we're looking for is to respond to the complaints that we've heard. There were 3 properties that have been made public that have given problems to their neighborhoods. We've gotten emails from countless others who are suffering the same difficulty. So to say this is a problem with 3 properties is a misstatement.
Oh,
What
I
I'm hearing
understand.
you say is that you would like to have enforcement applied equally to long-term rentals, permanent residents, and short-term rentals.
Absolutely.
And I certainly agree with
Absolutely. I was over at a resident's house the other day that had an issue that she was complaining about. And when we looked at it, we think that she might have an action, and we'll talk to you guys about that later.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're also saying that you would like us to maximize the regulations that would be required to get relief.
I guess that's what's kind of what it says. Yes, but I think it should apply equally to everybody in our community, not just short-term renters. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another
Well,
question?
Cheryl, I have one more comment
Okay.
on this. You know, this idea that this is only a couple properties is a mistake. You heard Bill say earlier that 7%, was it Bill, 7%? 600 short-term rentals, and according to the county, we have 160 that are licensed. Just this morning, when I went out to play golf, one of my golf partner, who lives in Turns Landing, told me the same story you did on a different property. So I was surprised that we were having that kind of problem in Turns Landing also. The board is getting plenty of letters from different properties throughout the community. And we have received letters from a group of individuals, on both sides, because the first town hall meeting was canceled. So we heard from the people, the short-term rental people representing short-term rentals, but we also heard from people who have had enough of the problems they're experiencing with short-term rentals. Let's be clear about something. We understand that properties that are managed, and I had a short-term rental property for years, and it was managed by Heilman, and I never had any problems. They're not the people we're going after. It's the reality of it is it's Airbnb and VRBO are the ones that are creating the problems, and we're trying to get a mechanism together where we can put some pressure to bring some change in that area. Bill, I'm sure Bill does a great job managing his properties. I have not heard any complaints from any of the realtors in the area about the realtors in the areas that are managing properties. It's the people that 460 other people who have short-term rental properties in the Pines that are ignoring the process, that are ignoring the county, and they're ignoring the neighbors that they have to deal with.
I agree with you, Larry. I think that as a board, we should put out a procedure for how people should report their problems, as opposed to people just guessing and not really knowing what to do. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're next. Please state your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Kathy Johnston from Pinehurst Road. Thank you for hosting this. My first opportunity. We've only been a homeowner for 2 years here in Ocean Pines, and been reading about the issues and what's being done. I just have a couple of clarifying questions, if you would please. What I'm hearing is that
Speak into the microphone. Thank you.
What I'm hearing is that you are trying to put some teeth into our regulations in order to handle these. Is that correct? We don't have the teeth now. My understanding is that when I read the declarations of restrictions, parking was clear. You couldn't park on the street just for any length of time. So I guess we don't have the teeth to take care of that. Is that the?
Yeah, let me. The oddities of being in a homeowners association. The police that we have, which is a fully certified police force, enforce the laws of the state of Maryland and the Worcester County Code. They cannot enforce our declarations of restrictions. So if you call the police about the trash, the police are going to look at it, and unless there's something in the county code or state of Maryland law that says they can do something, they're going to say, we can't do anything. And that's what we experienced with Abbeyshire. Okay? So we are trying to put teeth into an area because we're trying to enforce declaration of restrictions, not laws.
Okay, that's a clarification. I guess what I'm saying is, are not the owners also responsible, whether they're short-term, long-term rentals, or just owners? Aren't they? I mean, once you put teeth in this, do you have to? I guess the bottom line is, does it have to say, as just your motion says, engage in short-term? My question is, doesn't this apply? And I think you were just kind of, I'm sorry, I don't know everybody's name yet, but I think you were mentioning this. You want things to apply to everybody, have one. So I guess the question is, does it have to say short-term? And maybe it does. You've been studying it.
Well, to answer your question, it doesn't, but, okay, we went down this road a couple years ago when we addressed the whole community and violations of the Declaration of Restrictions. And we talked about fines, and there's a lot of pushback for fines on the community in general, within the community, okay? It boils down to, as I've said in the past, decades of mistrust between members of the community and the board and homeowners associations and residents in general.
Okay.
But here, let me give some statistics. Here's the big difference. A short-term rental comes in on Friday night. They typically leave and check out Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. If there's a problem there, the people are transient, so you can't talk with them about the problem unless you catch it right at Friday night at 11 p.m., okay? And you have the owner or property manager, and when you talk with them and say, hey, your renter that left, by the way, 5 hours ago had this problem, and you kind of get this response like, well, if we had known about it, or if they don't have a property manager, well, what are we supposed to do about it? We weren't there.
So
Okay?
are you thinking about fines now? Is that part of this?
That's the fines for the short-term rentals, and that's why we've broken out. On long-term rentals, when we talk about going to the court, let me just dispel some rumors. First, you're not going to walk down the Snow Hill and get a temporary injunction. I'll tell you that flat out, okay? And the reason I'll tell you that is because under our current enforcement of Declaration of Restrictions, if the general manager finds something seriously wrong, he's empowered immediately to go to our attorneys and have them request an injunction. Here's what happens. They get 30 days to respond, okay? And after 30 days, if they elect to either comply, it's taken care of, or if they elect to fight, then you schedule a court date.
Which is not 30 days.
Yeah, and I guarantee you the judges down in Snow Hill aren't sitting on their hands in the off chance that we'll come with something and they'll jump to it.
Yeah.
Okay? This is not a national security thing, not a matter of life and death. Okay, you're going to take your place in the queue, and the queue is going to be quite
Sure.
long.
Sure.
But here's the other thing that I think that's not well understood. The CPI department, when we started this, told us they get up to 12 complaints a day, 360 complaints a month. 99% of those complaints are handled in the time frame required, which is in 30 days. 1%, surprisingly, the same little 1% of the short-term rentals are the guys that elect to fight. And then we go to court, and we go through that process, and that drags out, but we do it, and it's effectively handling it. The issues that we generally, and because people are not transient in long-term rentals and permanent residents, we can handle that with them and talk with them because they're not flying the coop every Sunday morning at 11. And that seems to be fairly effective. But look, there are properties in the Pines that we have right now under court action for violations and repeated violations. And it just comes with being a homeowners association. And until we go fines across the board, which the community clearly did not want to do, okay, then we're going to have to deal with it. And the other sad thing about that, clearly understand, when we take somebody to court and go down for that injunction, that is like writing each one of us a $1,500 ticket that goes on your assessment.
Kathy, as Frank indicated, 3 years ago when the issue of imposing fines across the board was brought up, as he indicated, The community did not have an appetite for that. What I'm hearing tonight is the community does have an appetite for it now. They don't want fines only to apply to short-term rentals. They want them applied across the board. We certainly are hearing that, and this is certainly a question that can be revisited.
Well, I think just following up on that, if that's the way we're going as a association, that there has to be a whole procedure involved with that, with appeal, and which I'm sure you would have considered.
Let me address this injunction issue a little bit too. And these are real cases that we have had to deal with at the board. There is a homeowner who has a motorhome, and you're only allowed to park your motorhome in your driveway for a certain amount of time. The individual parks it there, leaves it there as long as he can until CPI comes and gives them a notice. He moves it, brings it back. We've had him to court. We've issued an injunction. All he does is move the vehicle and bring it back. We're going back and forth, back and forth. We had the same issue last year with an individual who had a trailer parked at his, a camper parked at his property, and insisted he would not move it. And we did take him to court. Court ordered him to move it. He moved it, brought it back again. So this idea that you can run down and get an injunction and stop things, it's not the reality. It
Right.
takes time, and once the condition is corrected, then you're back to step one again.
Thank you very much. And hi, neighbors.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, sir. Please state your name and your address before you ask your question.
My name's Andy Johnston, and I sleep on the other side of the bed of the previous speaker.
And she didn't cover your question for
When
her.
when I haven't been bad. I need some clarification from you. And again, I'm not good with names either. When I look at the background information on the front, it speaks to the county code for short-term rentals, litter, and noise. And the litter and noise portion doesn't necessarily mean just short-term rentals. It means the litter and noise ordinance, the county litter and noise ordinance that covers all properties in Worcester County. Is that correct?
You're absolutely correct, Andy, but this motion covers short-term rentals. So what we're going to do is take the county code that applies to short-term rentals, plus the county code that applies to noise, plus the county code that applies to litter, and apply that all to short-term rentals.
Okay, my question is, when you adopt it, if it's adopted, why would that not be enforceable with the rest of the community? You've adopted part of the county code. You've adopted a county ordinance. And if we've adopted, well, I'm not even sure we have to adopt it. If we're all covered by the county ordinance, are we not, can this not be enforced for, I mean, I'm in a community right now. I don't know that there are any short or long-term rentals on here. And it's the issues that I see here apply to everybody. And some of the issues that I have in my community are with homeowners. So if we adopt that, why would that not apply to everyone?
Okay. Let me give you a good, by the way, not only a good, that's a great question. And let me leave you in to a deep, dark secret of the Ocean Pines community. If you live in a section, generally speaking, and I have it in my notebook there, I can give you the exact ones, okay, that was developed after 1995, that is a non-Boise Cascade section, all federal, state, and local laws immediately apply to your section, and the board has the ability to levy fines right now with a vote of 4 board members. Okay? So in those sections right now, which are section 17, 18, 16, 15B, and 19, okay? What you want exists and a fine for noise, litter, or short-term rentals, the only thing that we need is 4 hands raised at the next board meeting. What we're trying to do is adopt for the other sections of Ocean Pines. And I think it's coming out to be pretty clear. And I think the question that we're going to have to decide short on is, should we just really adopt the sections of the non-Boise sections to all of Ocean Pines immediately?
Well, I mean, but that sounds like I don't know how much else has to be looked at, but it sounds like anytime you're treating one section in the community different than the other, that's going to bring some problems for enforcement and legal issues further down. I mean, you probably already dealt with it, but and this might not be the only subject matter.
Well, we've dealt with it. It's the community pushback. It gets down to, again, some issues of pushback in the community, but we could adopt and change the wording of the motion. And by the way, the process, the cost and everything would be exactly the same. So it's not like it's going to take a month of Sundays to do it, a ton of money or anything else. There may be, as you get into it, some people are going to obviously be a little bit more squeamish. But I think then it's our job to talk about it and say, look, it's existed right now for 25 years and nobody's really gotten, any dirty deeds done. So there's no reason to think that it'll happen next year.
Well, I'm not going to speak for everybody here, but I can't imagine any resident or property owner who rents that would not be in favor of these regulations. I mean, as long as it's handled uniformly and fairly, if the word short-term rental wasn't in there, probably we wouldn't be having this meeting tonight.
I tend to disagree, but for a different reason. Okay. And that gets into our issue as Ocean Pines is not revenue. Our issue is not getting taxes. Okay. Our issue is addressing complaints of homeowners.
Enforcement.
Right. The minute that when you get into the county, okay, and people pay a big fee for a license, people pay room taxes, people don't want to pay the fee to the county and people don't want to pay room taxes. And quite honestly, it's pretty lucrative. Look, if you can rent on Craigslist or VRBO or Airbnb for a certain amount and avoid the county taxes, it's pretty neat to have about $40,000 of income in the summer and not pay tax on it.
Sure. Next question went to the fines or the sightings, as you talked about earlier. They're against the property. Has there anything in the code, the county code or the county regulations that has teeth to enforce these guidelines against the tenants?
I'll say only if they disturb the peace and the sheriff gets called and they can get him under the county code, which is really part of what I'd call, it's not the criminal code, but the misdemeanor code.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's the things that Ocean Pines Police can't enforce.
Right. Yeah, that's
what we're talking about.
right.
Right. The last thing, and I oversaw a 911 center as part of my job for several years. Are we certain that calling 911 is the right thing to do and not the non-emergency number for the Ocean Pines Police? And the reason I say that is I'd hate to have a litter complaint call and the next call in queue is a baby that stopped breathing or an auto accident or one of these house fires that we've unfortunately suffered in the last 6 or 8 weeks. And there's a delay in help.
Sure. Let me share the explanation that was given to us. And it gets around to, again, what regulations we have and how they're handled and everything like that. If you call the non-emergency number, or if you go to the police station and report a disturbance and they take it down and they talk with you about it, it goes down, and running a 911 center, I think recognize this, it goes down one channel of communication. The minute you call 911, it goes down a different channel of communication. That call was logged differently and that call was treated differently inside the department. Within the county code, if the police go to a certain residence, a certain number of times based on 911 calls, the county code makes provisions where our police could act against it. That's why the information to call 911 when you have a problem came directly from our police chief.
I mean, this is an opinion, not a question. I'd have to disagree, not only for the reasons I just stated, but we're calling about a nuisance issue to Snow Hill. Well, that's where the 911 center is. That's what I'm saying. When we call 911, and maybe, again, I've only been here 2 years, but other than Ocean City, which has their own 911 center, when we call 911, we get a 911 operator in Snow Hill. And that whole process to reroute the call to whoever that person needs to reroute it to takes more time. And then you've got time away from a real emergency. And that's an opinion, not a question.
I don't know the exact routing. I know what the response times are, whether it goes to Snow Hill or whether it goes to DC and comes back. The average response time for fire anywhere in Ocean Pines from the South Fire Station is 6 minutes, and the police response is even shorter.
Oh, I'm not talking about emergency calls. You're correct. You're correct. I'm talking about these nuisance calls that have to be handled a different way. So,
Oh.
thank
I'm
you.
just saying what was relayed to us.
Okay, I understand. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address before your question.
Sorry, I'm not really a public speaker. My name's Carla Soden. I own 36 Ramport Road. I am one of the licensed short-term rentals. We try to do everything we can to, make people happy, including my neighbors. My neighbors have my cell phone. There's a problem, which I haven't had. I get a phone call, and I just hate the way we're being painted as this broad group of people that are making tons of money, and because that is certainly not the case for me. Anyway, my question is, I was reading I wanted to know, you said you've gotten a lot more complaints. Have any of the new ones been from the licensed places that have gotten
To our
the rental?
knowledge, no.
Okay.
Although when I say that, I will tell you that one of the emails that just recently came to the board
Mhm.
was that there was a person that was concerned, and they had reported a property to the county, and they said they finally applied for a license.
Okay.
Now, since then, we haven't heard anything, but
I
to
just-
my knowledge, the answer is no.
Okay, that was one of my questions. I think when you're talking about doing, I agree with Bill, I agree with Stuart. I really have been offended that we're supposed to be these awful people. I'm curious if some of these people that you don't know who the owners are they actually people or are they corporations? What's going on?
Let me answer. And first, the intent is not to paint you as, you live in the community, right? You have your rental home here in the communities. There's a problem, somebody calls you, you go over and deal with it.
I don't live in the community. I'm out of state. I use Coldwell Banker.
Okay.
All right. But, there's only so much that I don't know. What I'm concerned about is now it's become such a big issue. Am I going to have a neighbor that is just going to start nitpicking on everything and start putting in all these complaints? And then, how do you decide on the complaints? Because to my knowledge, we rent to families. They're multi-generational. I am going to be ordering more garbage cans, but I noticed in my DRs it says that you're not supposed to even see the garbage. The neighbors aren't supposed to see it on the side of the road, not on the side of the road, but even the side of the house, that you have to have something around it. So if I'm getting picked on by this, there's all kinds of things that go on in my neighborhood, which don't bother me, because it's not that big a deal. But is that going to cause a problem with neighbors where we're creating more problems? And then one more question I have. When you go down the road where you apply it to everybody, Does that mean that all the other families that live here aren't going to be able to have their showers, their birthdays, their anniversaries, the wedding? When I own my parents' house now. And when my father died, my mother had a whole bunch of people coming to her house. And, you know, I have to ask, what kind of community are we? Are we family oriented? I mean, you have to really think about the whole thing because there's all kinds of people in this. And that's one of the great things about Ocean Pines. It's not age restricted. It's not a question. You want to be a family party. And so the other question I had is, what is the nuisance, what are you proposing as far as the nuisance rule and the hours?
Okay. Well, first, let me address the nuisance. The noise code specifies, I believe it's 10 p.m. It might be 11. Okay. It's 10. Okay, so that's already county
Okay,
code.
I don't have a
and-
problem with that at
Yeah.
all. Are you thinking about like putting signs up so it's around the community that, you know, we have quiet time during these hours or something? I don't know. I just
Well,
sort of.
We could certainly publicize it, but I think at that point, you get into this general discussion, okay?
Mhm.
Which I think we'd like to generally keep away from, and that is, if it is a law of the state of Maryland, or if it's a law of the county,
Mhm.
okay, what obligation do individuals have to know that law versus our obligation to constantly put it up? And I realize there's speed limit signs and everything like that, so we can certainly publicize it. But it's a law, but more importantly than that, it's common sense. You know, I mean, if you're out past 11 p.m. blaring your stereo, when, you know, that's common sense. Let me address the other thing about painting things wrong. I suspect you will not have a problem at all, either with an image or with a real problem. And this is why. I have not specifically looked at the CB vacation contract, but I do know, and I think Bill is familiar with a number of these contracts, I will bet you a fair amount of money that there is a line in there that says if that renter violates these rules, that they can be removed from that property immediately.
Right.
And the property managers around here do that. Okay? So I can tell you that honestly, when this came down and we're talking this, I talked with Deborah Howman, and I told her, I think the biggest problem that we have with Borderlinks condominium is our golfers hit golf balls into your property. We simply don't have problems when the property manager is here and available to answer those things, or when the person lives in a community.
Yeah, Carla, also, we met with the Realty Association, and they made it clear that they are marketing the homes in Ocean Pines as family rentals. And they make clear in their screening of people who are requesting those rentals that they're not going to rent unless it's a family rental. We've also made clear to the public what Frank has said repeatedly this evening, that we have not had complaints from people who use a management company, use a realty company, and have the county license. So I think we've made that differentiation. You may not have heard it, but it's certainly been said repeatedly in our discussions of this problem. What we're trying to do is to get people to conform to the law.
Right.
And as long as they conform to the law, there's not going to be a problem. It seems that the people who are less inclined to conform to the law tend to be the people that use the VRBO and Airbnb to market their properties. So hopefully people will begin to go the route that you've taken and the route that Bill's customers have taken.
How active are you guys towards the long-term rentals? Because I know of quite of some of them that are like boarding houses, and that's certainly against the DRs. I mean, why can't you just deal with those situations
Well,
or enforce them? I guess I really don't get this whole enforcement thing. If it's in the bylaws, if it's in the DRs, it should be
sure.
you're not allowed to do this, period. And if you don't stop, then I could see you saying, giving somebody a fine. But I really do not, one of the things I like about Ocean Pines is that I thought that you guys weren't very invasive, with the HOA. And really, this is my first experience with a HOA. So, I don't know.
Let me give you an answer this way, and let me be brutally candid. I used to live in Columbia, Maryland, okay? We would not be having this meeting, nor this discussion, nor this problem in Columbia, Maryland, because this is what would have happened, okay? Last year, when the person at Abbyshire said, I am not going to change my business model unless you have somebody here that can throw me out of the house, the next person they would be looking at would be the Howard County Sheriff.
Now, was that an individual that owned that property?
Yes, and that was,
Okay.
no, let me explain, okay? That was a situation that pointed all the possible flaws of the current legislation. The homeowner lived in Delaware, okay?
Okay.
They leased the property legally to a limited liability corporation based out of Connecticut. The LLC based out of Connecticut listed the property on VRBO, Airbnb, and a number of the short-term rental sites. So when the problem started developing, okay, it was completely foreign because you're out of state with the owner, an out-of-state LLC, and it just seemed to not be within the scope. And the reason I brought up Columbia is this. Columbia has an active, proactive homeowners association. It has a couple 100,000 people. They go around each year, they examine property. They go around each year, make sure there's no paint chipped, that the shutters are the right color, that the door's the right color, that the house number's the right font, the house number's the right size. And if you're in violation, you're in violation, and they bite down hard, and they bite down fast, and they don't accept any excuses. The Eastern Shore has grown up with what I call a complaint-driven enforcement system. So you could have a great neighbor, and if they get a complaint, somebody will go out and look at it. Or you can have a lousy property next to you, and if nobody complains, the county won't do anything, and quite frankly, the association won't. And that's a community question, because when we get complaints, we address them, and we address them effectively. But if we don't get complaints, it's kind of a laissez-faire kind of situation. And the community, as much as that grates some people the wrong way, the community really seems to want the laissez-faire, complaint-driven system and not be invasive. Because I'll tell you, I lived in a homeowners association where it was invasive, and it's a real pain in the rear end.
Well, I would never want to live in a community like that. That's just I've talked enough, but thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, would you like to conclude, Larry, with a final remark, or Frank? Oh, there is a question. I didn't see your hand, sorry. Please state your name and your property address before you ask your question.
I'm Harley DeGraw, and I live at 15 Harlan Trace. And about a year ago, I read, I guess in the paper or one of the newsletters or something came out, a bunch of details about this regarding.
Speaking.
I'm sorry. I guess they come out and do annual inspections and put stickers on the door. Is all this true or not? Okay, then I guess what I read was bogus because I was really concerned.
It was originally true, though. Well, we've changed it. It was originally.
Okay, well, maybe that's the question I'm asking is it still true?
It was originally there, and we've taken it out to adopt the Worcester County regulations.
All right. I apologize for not keeping up. I was just concerned because, I'm not big on have big "come rob me" stickers put on the front of your house or in your neighbor's house. And I mean, fortunately, the one thing that we all enjoy here is a low crime rate and currently high property values. And I'd like to kind of keep it that way if at all possible.
No, your point is well taken. I understand where you're coming from. And look, when we started off, okay, it was, we were going to actually try to draft something and get the county to approve it that would have complied with the Abbyshire LLC's owner wish, that somebody could have appeared at the door and evicted the tenants. And by the way, that is legally possible. It's operationally possible, but the hurdles are extremely high. And it's counterculture to what goes on Eastern Shore. Okay? So what we've done over the years, over these last 2 years, look, we've talked with STR owners. Well, I've talked with Bill a number of times. We've talked amongst ourselves. We have engaged the community. We want to try to get a blend, and that blend is kind of delicate because we want to be able to address the problems, but not be able to disrupt what people have done over the years, and that is rent their property. And we don't want to disrupt the character of the community as a family-oriented place. So it's a difficult balance when you have one or two bad apples. And that's why we're targeting the bad apples.
I'm good with that. I just was a little concerned that some of
Well,
these things.
thank you for coming this
All right.
evening to clarify that.
Thank you.
I just want to add one thing to your comment. I admit that when we first started down this road, I was the person saying, well, let me just go to court and get an injunction. We'll get them right out of here. And we have, and Tom knows this, we have evolved from that point. And I'm really very proud of the way this thing has evolved. And I see us incorporating a lot of things into these rentals that perhaps we hadn't thought of, and we're maturing in those approaches. And so I don't think that the short-term rentals were the ones that raised their ugly heads first, and we had to deal with that problem. But do I see this being distributed among other types of rentals or things for the community in general? It very well might happen, and it's through discussion like this that we can get that to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none?
Well, again, I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. It's a lot of good discussion. I want to thank Cheryl and the Communications Committee for putting this all together, and fellow board members for being here, and also Frank Daly has put a lot of time and effort into this. We understand that this is not an easy subject, but there's from the discussions tonight, I just want to make 2 points. We want to make sure that, and having been someone who did short-term rentals myself at one point here, we're not targeting the short-term rental people who are trying to do the right thing. And we appreciate the fact those who have property managers and who are, trying to rent to families and make some money. There's nothing wrong with that. Also, we want to make sure that everybody understands that we have heard from both sides of this argument from a lot of people, and our emails were blowing up for weeks over this issue to the board, which is as it should be. So we're listening. We listened to those. Frank contacted just about everybody that wrote an email to the board to speak with them personally to try to explain and get a little more insight. So this is not an issue that we've taken lightly. And unfortunately, this is the same issue that's being addressed in community after community after community throughout the country, not just here in Ocean Pines. So I think we've been here long enough. Thanks for your attention, and we're very happy everyone came out tonight. Thank you.